The fight to stop Todd Blanche from being confirmed as Attorney General has just begun. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted along party lines. We know that already, 12-10, with 12 MAGA Republicans who are afraid of their own shadow, let alone Donald Trump, voting to make Donald Trump's consigliere of his organized crime family and current and former criminal defense lawyer the highest law enforcement officer of the land. He's not fit to hold that position. If he was confirmed, he'd be the most corrupt Department of Justice head we've ever had. And that's saying a lot since some of them went to jail. So the fight against Todd Blanche has just begun. It's the end of the beginning, not the beginning of the end. And from this group of senators, Cassidy, Curtis, Collins, and Murkowski, we got to get 3 out of those 4 to vote against Todd Blanche. I'm going to break it all down for you, along with covering a number of other topics. I'm Michael Popok. You're on the intersection. As you can, it looks like I'm in a museum, like night in the museum. It's not night in the museum. It's in a public space that I've commandeered in my travels with my family for holiday. But I could not miss being here with you on Legal AF, on the intersection, on Midas Touch Network. Justice doesn't sleep. The rule of law doesn't sleep. You don't sleep. I certainly don't. And so we're here together on the intersection. Thank you for joining me and giving me the generosity of your time, your spirit, and your commitment to this cause. I'm going to go through the case against Todd Blanche. I'm going to let the senators who are in the room today, including Senator Cory Booker, who will be joining me later in the week to talk about it, make the case against Todd Blanche. I recently referred to him as a human piñata. And that's apologies to piñatas. But we're going to talk through this so that you have the information and knowledge you need to help be a leader in the Block Blanche movement. And even if it's not successful, it's possible. It's possible he gets confirmed. We have to start laying the groundwork for not only the midterms, but for the impeachment hearings and beyond. Todd Blanche may have a pardon in his back pocket, which emboldens him to say and do things like, trying to take away a woman's right to choose state by state. I'm going to play a clip for you in a moment. You know, he acts with a lot of imperiousness, as if he'll never be caught. He'll never be subjected to any type of regulation or discipline or impeachment or removal. But that's not true. Not if the House and the Senate go to the Democrats. We'll talk about that. Then I want to talk about a new filing that just happened today on behalf of 35 former federal judges. There's developments in that case. It ties back to Todd Blanche and goes through the courtroom and the courthouse of Judge Williams down in Miami, my normal home court, if you will. And when I describe for you what got filed there, it'll make your eyebrows maybe roll off your head in terms of its attack on Todd Blanche and ultimately on Donald Trump. And I think they filed a winning piece of paper. I then want to talk about the Capital One filing, also in Florida. Same courthouse as Judge Williams, in front of Judge Altman. I know Judge Altman, when he served in a lower court, in a state court. Judge Altman is also presiding over 2 of Trump's cases, one against the BBC for defamation and $10 billion. And he's also in the case of Trump Trust versus Capital One. And I'll just tease the headline. Capital One closed 300 bank accounts of Donald Trump's 400 entities and his family because they suspected he was a money launderer and or participating in terrorist financing. Did that get your attention? We'll move on. The reflecting pool, it's not over. That scandal has also just begun. Wait till I go over what the defendant, Davey Hearn, the former Olympic cyclist, what his lawyers are likely to file against Jeanine Pirro, the now embattled, beleaguered Jeanine Pirro, the top prosecutor in D.C. Wait till you hear what's going to happen there. And as I predicted, it's already having a cascading effect in other cases, including the one brought by the Cultural Landscape Foundation against the Department of Interior and the Park Service. They have everything they need to know because of what Jeanine Pirro's office filed to dismiss the indictment against Davey Hearn. And that's not the only indictment that they dismissed pursuant to or related to the reflecting pool. So if Donald Trump was upset about that, wait till he hears that they're all been set free by Jeanine Pirro. So much more. I'll be talking. We'll update some other things about Max Miller, yet another abuse scandal that tied back to Donald Trump and ultimately Melania Trump. I'll talk about that. And more at the intersection of law and politics. Thanks for being here. We couldn't do it without you. Take a minute, hit that free subscribe button over on the Legal AF YouTube channel and help us to continue to grow our pro-democracy channel there as well. Let's start with the Block Blanche movement. Todd Blanche may have made a devil's bargain along with two willing participants in Senator Cornyn of Texas and Senator Tillis of North Carolina. This was always a bit of a charade. Tillis said, I won't endorse him unless the Jan 6 fund is declared dead with a piece of paper. Okay. What about the settlement amendment that Todd Blanche did the following day, Mr. Senator Tillis, in which he created tax immunity to the tax cheat named Donald Trump and his family, worth hundreds of millions of dollars? That's what this case has always been about. It's never been about a Jan 6 fund. What about that? That's, it's a half a loaf. It's a half a loaf. It's not half a loaf. It's 100% corruption. And the other thing that Tillis said he was concerned about was the survivors of the Epstein scandal. Oh, he's got to meet with the survivors of the Epstein scandal. So Todd Blanche meets with the survivors of the Epstein scandal for an hour. He gives them nothing, ice in winter. They feel worse off than before they met with him. I had Danny Bensky on and interviewed her recently, actually on this show about 2 weeks ago. She said her whole body shook. She was so emotionally traumatized by Todd Blanche's just brushing them off and acting like he had a stone in his shoe and he's being called to the principal's office to account for something he really didn't want to account for. But that satisfied Tom Tillis and Cornyn too. And so, he got right by them. Separately, and we're going to talk about Murkowski of Alaska in a minute. Apparently, Murkowski made it a condition that Todd Blanche fly to Alaska in order to kiss her ass to get his vote, or get her vote for him, I guess I should say. But today in the confirmation hearing wasn't about the you-know-what session going on among the Republicans. That was a little dirty. The you-know-what session. I have a phrase for it. I'm just not saying it out loud. I may be tired, but I'm not letting my manners go. But whatever that circle jerk was, that was the Republicans embracing Todd Blanche. Leave it to the Senate Democrats to make the case to the American people and to leave Todd Blanche diminished and hobbled as a result. They are speaking to us. They're speaking to the nation. They're speaking to history. They're speaking to the fellow senators who need to vote yay or nay on Todd Blanche in the next week or so. Sheldon Whitehouse, who I've had on the show before, senator from Rhode Island, made an impassioned 16-minute speech against Todd Blanche, and he did not mince words. I'm going to show you two clips of Sheldon Whitehouse back to back. Let's play the first one.
Today, I think, is a sad and embarrassing day for this committee. As it looks like on a party line vote, we are going to advance out of this committee probably the most discreditable person ever to seek the office of Attorney General of the United States. The reasons to vote against him number in the hundreds, but let's just focus on a few where my Republican colleagues purport to have great concern. Let's start with the Epstein files, where Todd Blanche participated in the cover-up, continues to participate in the cover-up, and is responsible for a massive screw-up of the release of the documents. Cover-up and screw-up on the Epstein files. What do I mean by cover-up? Well, first, they looked at 4 FBI 302s that were the testimony of a woman who told the FBI in a formal statement that she had been sexually assaulted and physically assaulted by Donald Trump around 13 or 14 years of age. Of those 4 302s, they released one, the one that did not mention Donald Trump. Well, fortunately for transparency, these documents had been released in other areas and bait stamped. So people figured out that some were missing. And with that, the other 302s that mentioned Donald Trump had to be produced. Only because they got caught were those 302s produced. And right now, as we sit here, Todd Blanche is still sitting on 37 pages that are almost certainly the agent's notes off of which the 302s were taken. That should be disclosed under the Epstein Files law, but instead, those 37 pages remain covered up.
Okay, I mean, I could play the whole 16 minutes and I think you'd get the point. And Sheldon, Senator Whitehouse, knows from what he's talking about, right? He was a U.S. attorney in Rhode Island. He's been a prosecutor. He's been on the Judiciary Committee for a couple of decades or so. And, you know, we expected him to lead the charge. And he did. I mean, there's nobody that did a better job than Sheldon Whitehouse of trying to tear down Todd Blanche during his questioning. But the difference you're seeing, just think of the numbers I used. The Senate Judiciary Committee was in control of the Republicans this time around. And the Republicans set the rules. And the rules were 10 minutes per senator. So that's all each of the 10 Democratic senators had, 10 minutes apiece. They had 100 minutes. That's it. Sheldon Whitehouse, by contrast, just gave a 16-minute closing argument against Todd Blanche. And he's not the only one. But let me play another clip of Sheldon Whitehouse because it's so powerful and it proves my point. Play it.
There's Epstein for you. And let me ask the letter from the Epstein victims, to Senators Tillis and Cornyn, to be put into the record. So next we get to this crooked slush fund Trump family tax amnesty scam. Let's take a look at that. We've got these two new pieces of paper, one signed only by Todd Blanche, one not signed by anybody, neither of which has any legal effect whatsoever. They are decorative. So what problems do they leave behind? Well, one is, can you trust Todd Blanche going forward? I will tell you, I do not. I think it would be unreasonable to trust him going forward. There is enough weasel room in these documents to drive a truck through. And what might that truck look like? Well, you could get rid of the anti-weaponization fund for $1.776 billion, and in a month, put out the Trump Justice Fund for $1.9 billion. Nothing in this document prevents anything like that from happening. You could open a drive-up window at the Department of Justice for cop beaters from January 6th to come through and get friendly Federal Tort Claims Act settlements from the Department of Justice. They're already handing out settlements to Trump's allies. What's to prevent the drive-up window? Come on in. Here we are. We got the friendly form for you to file, and here's a check. Nothing prevents the cop beaters from being funded by the Trump Department of Justice. But let's assume that we really have made a big improvement here. Let's assume that the burglar has been forced to give back some of the jewelry he stole. Being forced to give back some ill-gotten gains doesn't mean you're not still a burglar. There's a question of the man's character, that he was willing to get into these schemes in the first place.
Now, we also had Senator Schiff of California. Donald Trump likes to use nicknames because he's petty and disgusting and sophomoric. He's the guy that Donald Trump calls Shifty Shift, and he's been trying to indict him for the last 550 days of his administration for some sort of mortgage fraud, because he doesn't like that when Adam Schiff was in the House, he was one of the House managers for one of Donald Trump's impeachments. So he's been going after Schiff ever since. You wouldn't know how Schiff has responded. He's not in fear. He is vigilant. He is presenting his case to the American people without fear. And here's a clip from Adam Schiff.
So this is someone who has violated his code of ethics, blatantly misled this committee in testimony, supported the establishment of a fund for cop beaters, concealed and covered up documents implicating the president in the Epstein files, gone after the president's enemies, and used the DOJ to enrich the president in a collusive settlement. Is this who we're prepared to confirm as Attorney General? It appears so. The fundamental problem with Todd Blanche is not that he's inexperienced, not that he's not capable, not that he's not intelligent. The problem with confirming Todd Blanche is that he has never been able to shed his role as criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump. He just can't do it. He does not represent the American people now. He will never represent the American people. He will never do what's best for the American people. He will only do what's best for Donald Trump. And you cannot leave someone like that as the nation's #1 law enforcement official, not when you have a corrupt president engaged in the most unprecedented, self-enriching schemes we have ever seen. You just can't do it and hope to have anything left of the rule of law. I urge a no vote on this confirmation, and I yield back.
And then we've had Cory Booker, the senior senator for New Jersey, on a number of times leading into the confirmation vote. We just had him on recently on the intersection, and I thought he did a masterful job as well. Here's a clip of the case made, his version of the closing argument against Todd Blanche by Senator Cory Booker. Play the clip.
They didn't get together to say, this is really bad. This is eroding trust in the justice system. This is eroding trust in the rule of law. We have to find a way to hold powerful people accountable. No, they came together with Todd Blanche in the room. How do we protect the president? And what happened after that? One of the most unusual things in the history of our country happened after that. Todd Blanche, at the highest heights of our Justice Department, ran to the prison of Ghislaine Maxwell. This is unprecedented. This is, lawyers tell me, untoward. This is corrupting. He didn't study the case files. He didn't talk to the prosecutors. No, he ran to the jail cell and met with her for 2 days, insulting every single Epstein victim that had been asking for a meeting for years. And after 2 days of meetings, did we get information that led to an indictment? No. Did we get information that led to new opens of investigations? No. Did we get one more conviction? No. What did we get? That a convicted sex offender was able to leave her confinement and go to the cushiest prison in our land, that by Bureau of Prison Law, by DOJ law, is a violation of their principles. So Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in the lowest possible confinement after giving no information that helped us get one more investigation started, and has been silent. And the man responsible for that, we are about to make the Attorney General of the United States of America. This man is not our lawyer. He is not America's lawyer. He is about to become Trump's sword against his adversaries and shield against any scrutiny. The shield is going to shield him from tax cheating. The shield is going to shield him from investigation for any involvement he may have had in Epstein's deeds. And the sword, I've seen it. Unprecedented that the Attorney General should investigate colleagues here on this committee. This is farcical. It would be literally laughably funny if it wasn't so dangerous. We are about to put a person in one of the most powerful positions in the land, vital for not only enforcing the law, protecting national security, but also vital for upholding our democracy. And my Republican colleagues sound like Jan Brady, Marsha, Biden, Biden. You are worried about a pickpocket when it comes to grand theft larceny. When it comes to our democracy, you're worried about someone who is doing petty theft while there is the murder of our democratic traditions going on before our eyes. We are in dangerous waters, folks. We are in dangerous waters. We are turning the ideals of justice and this committee into a mockery by letting the least qualified person, a person proven to do Donald Trump's will over the law. He is about Trump and not truth. He is about corruption and not the Constitution. He's about being Donald Trump's lawyer and not the people's lawyer. This is so deeply wrong. We will rue the day that we let this man have this much power under such a corrupt president. Thank you.
Now, it's not just because Todd Blanche is unethical or it has been accused of contumacious conduct, contemptuous conduct in a court of law, or bad faith, or lack of ethics, or the fact that he has willingly allowed Donald Trump to weaponize the Department of Justice and go on the attack against Donald Trump's perceived political enemies or targets. It's not because there is rampant abuse of the grand jury process by prosecutors, because the tone is set from the top, and this tone is rotten, as led by Todd Blanche. But Todd Blanche also says things in public, and then he's caught saying other things that show you why he needs to be stopped. Let's just take one example, shall we? The Dobbs decision. Remember that decision 3.5 years ago where the Supreme Court took away a woman's right to choose, overturning 50 years of precedent established by Roe versus Wade. First time in American history that a constitutional right was given by the Supreme Court in the Roe decision, for instance, and then was taken away subsequently, right? They may not grant new rights, but they don't take away constitutionally protected rights until we got the Dobbs decision written by Sam Alito. And remember what they said at that time in the decision? I'll summarize it for you. We're not saying that individual states aren't capable, who are closer to the people, in deciding whether that state is going to allow the choice or not. All we're saying is it's not a constitutionally protected right that finds any residence or any location in the Constitution or our interpretation of it. So it's a state by state issue, which is why we have, 23 states that don't allow it and the rest allow it. And then you've got women, especially those on the lower economic rung, who are forced to carry children to term or die in back alleys because they live in states that won't allow it, or will criminalize or try to criminalize a woman crossing state lines into a state that does allow it. So if you thought that those states were out of whack, like Texas's bounty hunting regulation, SB 5, then you're gonna hate what you hear Todd Blanche say about how he is going to use the Department of Justice, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Department of Human and Health Services to go after every state to make sure the Dobbs decision is the law of the land. That is exactly the opposite of even what the Supreme Court said. They didn't say that a woman that abortion was mandated to be illegal throughout the country, right? They didn't ban abortion. They said it was a state-by-state decision. So what do you make of this clip of Todd Blanche talking about effectively taking the Dobbs decision and taking it to all 50 states? Play the clip.
To know this is a big part of our job. A big part of my job as the acting attorney general and Attorney General Bondi before me was bringing back regularity to the Department of Justice and the government when it comes to protecting religious liberty. And we're not done. We have a lot of work to do with some of the policies around pro-life and some of the pro-abortion work that the Biden administration and the Justice Department allowed to happen. Some of that is taking longer than we want, but rest assured that we're working, hand in hand with HHS and the FDA and the White House and President Trump's team to get permanent solutions so that the Dobbs decision becomes permanent in every single state. So that means that if states are allowing, if states have said we are going to protect the unborn and we're going to protect every life from the moment of conception, we're putting practices and policies in place so that other states and other organizations can't attack that, and they can't, do things like they're doing with mailing in mail order drugs and things like that. And it's a process that takes a lot of time, and that's why it's been 19 months and we don't have complete victory yet, but we will have victory, and victory will be soon, and it will be permanent. And that's an important thing to everybody to remember.
If this kind of stuff doesn't make your blood boil and get you motivated to go to the polls, bring others with you, register to vote, parachute in to blue states to help on the ground to make sure that those states are secure for Democrats, or parachute into red states to hold down the margins of victory. If that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. Just pick any one issue. It doesn't have to be a right to choose. It could be civil rights and civil liberties. It could be how depraved and inhumane Donald Trump's immigration and migration policy is and deportation policy is. It could be how they are cutting off funds to blue states, but not red states, to punish them for not supporting Donald Trump, including FEMA aid. Pick one. Pick any one, if that's what it takes to get you to vote. Or in the case of Todd Blanche, in the next round of voting, to call your senator or all these senators. Call Senator Cassidy of Louisiana in his office. Call Senator Curtis of Utah. Call Senator Collins of Maine. Call Senator Murkowski of Alaska. They all have offices in Washington. Call the Senate switchboard and tell them they need to oppose Todd Blanche for all the reasons that I just outlined. So the Blanche block movement is important, even if it's not successful. See, I agree with Senator Cory Booker when he joined me and said that. There's just some fights that you have to have. And in the long term, in the long arc of history, it will bend towards justice. We just don't know where on the arc we are at any given moment, right? We got to climb a mountain, as our civil rights leaders have said in the past. We just don't know where we are on the mountain. I think we're slightly far from the top. But we have to fight every fight, right? And together here on the Midas Touch Network, on Legal AF, on this Intersection podcast, we will. Now let me turn to the new filing made by those 35 former federal judges. They're back, led by Judge Michael Luttig and Judge Nancy Gertner, Republicans and Democrats, patriots. They are the ones that got Judge Williams off a motion they filed to reopen the Trump versus IRS case. And finally, after a round of briefing, have her declare at the end of May that the lawyers for Donald Trump and Donald Trump effectively committed bad faith and violated what we call Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, dealing with meritless filings. Her conclusion, Donald Trump controlled all the pieces on the chessboard, that lawsuit was bogus and phony from the beginning, that it was meritless, that it was bad faith brought in front of the judge in an attempt to defraud the judge. She didn't quite get to the F word, but she let the parties know that she was strongly considering sanctions under her inherent authority and under Rule 11 to administer justice, and she wanted to get to the bottom with fact-finding whether fraud had been committed on the court. Having given Donald Trump's lawyers the opportunity to do something about it, for instance, if a federal judge used the F word with me, it said fraud or fraud on the court, I'd be hiring my own lawyer. I'd be preparing affidavits, sworn testimony under oath. I'd be getting evidence in front of her to convince her that she was wrong. Do you think that's what Donald Trump's lawyer, Alejandro Brito, did? No. He didn't take it seriously. I could tell by the filing. I practiced law in that jurisdiction. Instead, it looks like he took a piece of paper and wiped his backside with it and filed it. He didn't have any affidavits. He didn't have any declarations or sworn testimony from people like Todd Blanche, the head of the IRS, the head of the Treasury Department, the Department of Justice. Nobody. And so he did not take the fact-finding seriously that the judge was conducting. He kind of buried his head in the sand, hoping, maybe she's not fact-finding related to a potential fraud on the court. She was. And the federal judges took it seriously, the former federal judges. Now, they're not, let me make something clear that's made a little bit muddied by a new filing by Donald Trump's lawyers. They hired a new guy, a guy named Chris Operson, who represents a lot of MAGA interests. He's been a lawyer for the NRA and a bunch of Trump interests. He comes in from a firm named DLA Piper. He's a big appellate lawyer too. And he decides, I know what my argument's going to be. Those judges over there, they're not even parties. They're at best friends of the court. They're amicus brief people. They're amici, judge. And you can't listen to them. They're partisan hacks. In fact, he did it again in a new filing that just got filed in the last couple of days. Called them partisan hacks. You know who's a partisan hack? Chris Operson, right? Not the 35 former federal judges who have banded together along with 150 or 200 of their brethren to file, where appropriate, cases and motions and briefs and the rest to try to protect our rule of law. You wouldn't know that to hear it from Chris Operson, because the first thing he does is an ad hominem attack on the former federal judges, almost all of which he could not hold their, what's the sport phrase, jockstrap. So after done attacking them for the second time, in terms of their partisan aspect, they're Republican and Democratic both appointed. They're independents, if anything. He then went on to say, Judge, you can't sanction us the way you sanctioned us for a illegal, meritless lawsuit leading to an illegal, meritless Jan 6th weaponization fund settlement, because you don't have the power to do that because they're just friends of the court. You can't give them money. And the judge in her order said, yeah, I can. I'm going to do monetary sanctions. You pay their costs, because they're not just friends of the court. They're also moving parties. They filed the motion, Chris. They are movants, and therefore they're entitled, if they win, if the judge so desires, they're entitled to their fees and costs. See, when she entered her order, she made a finding that there was bad faith on the part of Donald Trump, his lawyers, including Todd Blanche, and they should all be referred to bar regulators. And some of them shouldn't be allowed to practice in the Southern District of Florida for the next year. She did not go as far as I wanted her to go, which is to find that there was fraud on the court. But she had enough in her tool bag under Rule 11 and her inherent authority to come up with monetary and non-monetary sanctions. She also declared that they're not allowed to use her any longer. They're not allowed to use the imprimatur of the court to cover their unholy, illegal, illicit settlement. Because there's no proper settlement, she ruled, because there's no proper lawsuit. And therefore, the head of the Department of Justice, soon to be perhaps Todd Blanche, doesn't have the power under the Judgment Act to compromise a claim and settle a case the way he settled it. He certainly doesn't have the right to the following day, issue another piece of paper that says that he's not backing away from the release of liability the immunity, the super pardon he gave to Donald Trump and his family, which is so broad, even the Supreme Court didn't give him that. See, that was the quid pro quo for Todd Blanche to get the job. You know, Donald Trump was looking around, who will give me what I want? Who will give me, forget the fund, who will give me, for decades of tax cheating, who will give me immunity and a get out of jail free card? Who is it going to be? You know? And, you know, he created a Hunger Games to create this, to pick this new candidate in Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche got passed over by somebody who was accused of being a child sex predator. Matt Gaetz. Remember Matt Gaetz? Matt Gaetz was supposed to be the Attorney General until he had a sticky little problem called accusations of child sex trafficking. So if you can't beat an accused child sex trafficker, you got a problem. And then he wasn't even the first choice coming out of the gate. That was Aileen Cannon, the judge in Southern District of Florida in the Mar-a-Lago case, because she was on the organizational chart that got leaked by the Trump administration to start off the transition. So Aileen Cannon, first choice. Matt Gaetz, accused child sex trafficker, second choice. And then Todd Blanche is like, is it my turn now? No. Pam Bondi. We'll do Pam Bondi until she flames out in disgrace. And then even then, my turn? Nope, not your turn yet. I'm thinking about Harmeet Dillon, Civil Rights Division. She's doing a good job of destroying civil liberties in this country. Lee Zeldin, he's doing a good job destroying environmental protection law. Oh, Jeanine Pirro, before the reflecting pool, I'll talk about later. Yeah, she'd be good too. And then finally, it was, how low will you sink? And now we know from Todd Blanche how low he will sink. So in this new filing, the 35 federal judges told the judge she should not stay her order while they're appealing to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta, because they're losers. They're not going to win at the 11th Circuit. And their arguments about, well, our First Amendment rights are violated because we're not allowed to call the settlement a settlement, because it's not a settlement, because the judge ruled that the lawsuit was phony. You can't settle. You can steal from the Treasury. You can create a document that then will be challenged by other courts, but you can't call it a settlement using Judge Williams to do it. And that's not a First Amendment violation. They also said there's no irreparable harm. What's the irreparable harm? Oh, we want to be able to call the settlement a settlement. So what? So what? See, this case is not over. Judge Brinkema in the Eastern District of Virginia has a case called Floyd versus the Department of Justice, and it's going to get picked back up. In fact, tomorrow, programming note, I'll be interviewing Skye Perryman of Democracy Forward, who has that case. Her public interest law firm has that case. And I want to talk to her about what she's going to do next about the amendment to the settlement agreement to give Donald Trump tax immunity for life, apparently, or at least to the date of the signing of the document by Todd Blanche. I want to know what she's going to do about it in that courtroom, what Judge Brinkema is going to do about it. What is Judge Williams going to do about it? What is the next future judge, not yet named because the lawsuit hasn't yet been filed, going to do about it? Because this issue of Todd Blanche giving his patron unlimited tax-free existence along with his family and affiliates for the last 10 or 15 years is unconscionable. And I implore the federal judges who get the case to do something about it. The 35 former federal judges are certainly standing by to do it. And if that's the best argument that the new lawyer who just entered the case has, Chris Oberson, I didn't know they didn't know they were in a Rule 11 fact-finding mode, Judge. They didn't know that you were potentially holding them in contempt. Chris, what did you think those words meant? Or what did Alejandro Brito, your client, think the words meant when the judge said, I'm worried about collusion, I'm worried about fraud on the court, I'm worried about bad faith filings? What did you think she was going to do? Take you out for ice cream? Or did you think, this might be a contempt proceeding? Yeah, it's a contempt proceeding, all right, and in order to show cause. And you filed a 5 or 8 page POS. You know, that's the way that works. So we'll continue to follow that case while the case is up on appeal at the 11th Circuit. If they don't get the ruling they like down with Judge Williams, which they're not, the Trump side will run up to the 11th Circuit. We'll see who the panel is, and we'll be able to report on it from there. And I'll try to get Judge Ludig back on with some other lawyers like Matt Platkin, formerly the New Jersey Attorney General, who's handling the case, along with Norm Eisen, who's handling the reflecting pool case. See how incestuous this becomes? I'll try to get them all on Legal AF YouTube channel for exclusive interviews with me to brief our audience. So glad that you are here supporting what we do on The Intersection. A few ways to keep us on the air and be the gas in the tank for what we do. The Intersection is an audio podcast as well. Download the audio. Even though you may watch it on video, it helps us and the algorithm and the ratings and the rest if you download the audio. So please do that for us. As people know, I'm sort of based in two worlds. I run and I co-founded the Legal AF YouTube channel, where we have 12 new videos a day, even while I'm traveling, even while I'm on holiday. Yes, I have a very supportive and devoted family that lets me steal away to rooms like this so you and I can have a conversation. So come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and hit that free subscribe button. We're going to get to about 1.2 million before the summer is over with your help. All you got to do is hit that button. It costs you nothing, but it means really the world to us. So that's another way. Legal AF Substack is great. We're doing 8 to 9 postings there. I do a live report, generally when I'm in the States, every day to catch you up on matters at the midday. And if you don't know about Substack, I think you're going to like Legal AF Substack. Try to keep us in the top 10 of all U.S. politics. We're dangerously close to cracking the top 10 with your help. We will get there. And then lastly, as people probably know, I founded a law firm dedicated to our Midas Touch, Intersection, and Legal AF audience. Really, truly, we really just promote it on Midas and on the Legal AF YouTube channel. And as a result, our family of clients around the country are, frankly, Midas Legal AF people or adjacent to them. They know somebody that's a Midas or Legal AF person. And so there's a QR code. If you've been injured in an accident, or somebody in your life that you love has been, or God forbid, seriously injured, or there's even been death resulted from somebody's negligence, car accident, auto accident, trucking accident, Uber, rideshare accident, Waymo accident, medical malpractice, you name it. We'll evaluate the case. Call the number on the screen, 1-877-POPOK-AF, and check out our new website, brand new website. I'm very proud of it, www.thepopokfirm.com. Same tireless fighters, brand new website. And we don't get paid unless you do. So we do a very good job of evaluating your cases. We're representing hundreds and hundreds of our community here. And so I wanted to put that out there as well. And the other way to support what we do is our sponsors. These are new sponsors to the Intersection who know our work, know our audience, and want to be here to support our pro-democracy channel. And now a break for our sponsors. Before we continue, let's talk about Medicare for a moment, because Medicare is one of the most complicated systems in the country. Thousands of plans, endless fine print, and a lot of people giving you advice who are not actually incentivized to show you everything. See, that's the part nobody tells you. And most people assume they're seeing all their options. They're not. That's why Chapter exists. Chapter isn't an insurance company. They're an independent Medicare advisor. In fact, they are the only ones that compare every Medicare plan nationwide. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your priorities, and give you a clear answer. If you're already on the right plan, they'll tell you. If you're not, they'll fix it. They've helped folks in this audience save thousands on their Medicare coverage. They can help you too. It takes about 20 minutes, and Chapter is a free resource for my audience. So if you're on Medicare or about to be, don't guess. Talk to Chapter today. If you've ever had a cat, they're basically tiny food critics. My cat, Chanel, definitely is. She turns her nose up at just about everything. But when I put down Smalls, the bowl is empty in minutes. Even better, since switching Chanel to Smalls, I've noticed more energy, a softer coat, and a whole lot less stink coming from the litter box. That's because Smalls fresh cat food is protein-packed recipes made with preservative-free, 100% human-grade ingredients you'd find in your fridge, and it's delivered right to your door. Their fresh, gently cooked food is made without preservatives, so more of the nutrients are digestible, which means less junk comes out the other end. After switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements. And if you're worried your cat won't like it, you can try Smalls risk-free. They'll refund you if your cat won't eat their food. So stop serving your little carnivore a bowl of processed shortcuts. For a limited time, because you're an Intersection listener, get 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. That's 60% off your first order, plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/intersection. Welcome back to the Intersection, and thank you for the generosity of your time and spirit in support of our podcast. I'm Michael Popok. Listen, we got some breaking news in the middle of the breaking news. I started off my Block Blanche segment at the top of the podcast. As you know, I'm traveling and I'm recording this with a sort of a scorecard of the senators on the Senate floor that need to be appealed to in order to deny Todd Blanche his confirmation. Yeah, he flew through 12-10 at the Senate Judiciary Committee, but I said that was the beginning, not the end. And those impassioned speeches and closing arguments by senators like Blumenthal and Booker and Whitehouse and Schiff and Klobuchar and the rest looks like they may have worked. Because you'll remember I said there were 3 C's plus an M that we got to focus on. Collins, Curtis, Cassidy, and Murkowski. We got to get 3 out of those 4, right? 3 out of those 4 to peel away since Mitch McConnell is sort of, out. And we just got reporting, subject to confirmation, but it's looking pretty good, that Susan Collins, of all people, in Maine, fighting for her life to be returned to the Senate, is going to vote no against Todd Blanche. Now, that opens up a tremendous amount of public and Trump-led pressure on Susan Collins. You know what happens next. Think about, I don't know if it's political courage or political suicide, but we now have Susan Collins, who's declared that she's opposed to Donald Trump. You know what's going to happen. I'm sure it's happening right now. Donald Trump, she is addled. She's a rhino. She's a Democrat. She's disgusting. Too late. She's the candidate, right? Unless Donald Trump is going to support the new Democrat who's running in Rhode Island, he's got no choice but Susan Collins for future control of the Senate. And I guess, I wonder what the straw that would break the camel's back would be. But apparently the most corrupt attorney general in history, lacking completely in ethics, who will only be beholden to Donald Trump and not be independent. That looked like that was a bridge too far, even for Susan Collins. How many times has Susan Collins broken our hearts where I've let off a hot take with, well, there's still a hope. Susan Collins says she may vote with the Democrats on that. And then I got a report, nope, she's not voting on the Democrats on that. Like things related to a woman's right to choose or immigration policies or civil liberties or something like that. But she took a stand on this one. If this holds up, we are one step closer to completely blocking Todd Blanche. And as Collins goes, she's close to Murkowski. And Lisa Murkowski, even though she made Todd Blanche fly all the way to Alaska, I don't know how he got there, but one of the Air Force ones, hopefully the one with the missile blinding technology. But she may follow Collins. See, once permission is given, once that glass ceiling is broken, don't be surprised if others fall in line. For instance, what does Senator Cassidy of Louisiana have to lose? He's not coming back to the Senate because Donald Trump opposed him in the primaries. And so he's like Tillis and Cornyn. So if we get Cassidy and Collins and Murkowski, Todd Blanche is done. For all of the devil's bargains that he made, all the public lying that he did, that closing argument by those Democratic senators seems to have resonated. And we just need a couple more. Just need a couple of more. Now you got to say in doubt that Blanche's confirmation is in doubt. which makes your phone call to Collins, oh, you don't have to call Collins anymore. We could call Collins to reinforce it. To Cassidy, to Curtis, to Murkowski is important because they're not making more Republican Senate seats right now. Whoever's there is there, right? Musical chairs have stopped. All right, let me now turn to this. Let me stay with Todd Blanche for a minute, and let me go to the reflecting pool. I'll do it slightly out of order. Because the reflecting pool is reflecting something. Some people ask me jokingly, what does it reflect, Popok? I mean, it's technically reflecting the Lincoln Memorial, but it's also reflecting the depravity and the lack of morals and moral compass for the Department of Justice under Todd Blanche's and Donald Trump's leadership, right? It is not just the reflecting pool indictment of Davy Hearn. It's Davy Hearn and the American public's indictment of the Department of Justice about the reflecting pool indictment and what it is emblematic of. When Davy Hearn, the former Olympic cyclist, came off a 52-mile bicycle ride, good for you. I got to stop for a snack halfway through a 52-mile car ride. But he's still an athlete. He's in his 60s, God love him. And he stopped off and he wanted to get a souvenir, like huge sheets of floating liner in the reflecting pool, which we now know the cost of it. And so does the Department of Justice. And so does Donald Trump. And so does the Atlantic Industrial Coating Company that did the job. Shoddy workmanship, cutting corners, not enough time, things like that led to the delamination, water penetration of this waterproofing 2-layer system. Nothing to do with Davy Hearn or 3 other people charged with misdemeanors who, as of the last 24 hours, all of them have had their indictments dismissed. All of them. And it's not because the judge scared Jeanine Pirro. It's because I believe what Jeanine Pirro wrote in her motion to dismiss that got her on the hot seat with Donald Trump, which is she went down and saw the drained pool and saw that all of the damage at the bottom of the pool at the basin level could not have been caused by a vandal pulling violently at a piece at the top. Because, picture the size of this. This is a 7-acre pool, okay? Have you ever been in a pool? Most people have. You ever touch the liner or get your hand on it? You think if you pulled a piece here, it's going to delaminate all 7 acres? In what world? That's what our Bob the Builder president thought, because he needed to have a fall guy, and it was convenient for him to use his former Olympic cyclist as a fall guy to cover up for a number of problems. One, Donald Trump hired a political crony with no experience on a no-bid contract to handle the water filtration issue. So a company called, get this, I'm not making it up, Green Water Technologies. Okay, well, Green Water Technologies is living up to its name because it caused the algae bloom. Soon as they flipped the switch of that ozone injecting system, soon as they turned it off, algae bloom right away. And a contributor for that was the dark blue color. Wrong color in the heat of the summer of Washington, creating algae bloom that's been going on for like 30 years. And then he did another no-bid contract. Oh, by the way, the no-bid contract with Green Water Technology, the guy that owns that company, 2-time felon related to campaign contributions. So you got that. Then they hire Atlantic Industrial Coating on a recommendation for the Bedminster Golf Course general manager. Oh, what could go wrong? 7-acre reflecting pool, part of a national monument system. The guy that runs the golf course. Of course. Makes perfect sense. That company, very, very good at doing spray-on liners for the bed of your pickup truck. Very good at that. Very good at that. Pretty good at, like a pool in the back of a golf club. Terrible at trying that process untested without support in an uncompetitively bid process in 7 acres of a reflecting pool, with untested technology and untested contractors, and then using another contractor they'd never used before. What could go wrong? Everything that the Washington Post a month ago outlined went wrong. But they needed a fall guy. And now you got fall guy after fall guy, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen next. Trump blames Pirro. Pirro thinking about resigning or him thinking about firing her. And there's no closer person in the Department of Justice besides Todd Blanche than Jeanine Pirro. She was his bootlicker and enabler when she was on Fox. That's where all these people come from. Don't forget, Pete Hegseth, Fox and Friends, Weekend Edition. He couldn't even break into the Varsity and be on the weekly show. He had to be on the Weekend Edition and do the ball drop in Times Square. That prepared him to be the head of the Pentagon. Okay. Then you've got the current head of the Director of National Intelligence, which is Bill Pulte, who's never been an intelligence officer, worked for the FBI, CIA, or any other agency before, and he's doing it part-time. What could go wrong? And then you got Jeanine Pirro, Donald Trump's best friend. Here's Donald Trump throwing Jeanine Pirro under the bus. Play it.
Because the judge was extremely unfriendly to Jeanine. And frankly, I think she choked because the judge was really vicious. Instead of going after the people that did it, the judge went after her and went after her department. And I guess she choked. I don't know what the hell happened.
Are you reconsidering her role?
I don't know what you don't. You're fake news. Don't ever talk again. You're fake news. One of the worst in the business. Fortunately, nobody watches you. But something happened. There was graffiti all over it. I won't say what was on the sidewalk, but horrible, 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 disgusting stuff. And not only did we fix it, we have military standing there watching it. And if anybody touches it, that was the one mistake with the reflecting pond. They hadn't put up the cameras yet. They had enough up because you see what's happening. But if they would have had them up, we would have had it would have been a lot easier. And I was disappointed with Jeanine Pirro, really disappointed with Jeanine Pirro. She folded like an umbrella, and people get away with things, and it's a disgrace.
And apparently, she's had a series of phone calls with Trump, and one worse than the other based on people that heard it. And she's seriously considering resigning, which is par for the course because she's also a coward. She ended up trying to blame her line prosecutor, the underlying person who signed the motion to dismiss. But that was 18 pages of detailed information about why the Department of Justice brought fraudulent evidence into a grand jury room. And chapter and verse, Genesis 1, part 1, all the way through, I don't know, what is it, Deuteronomy? With pictures and saying Jeanine Pirro was down at the site and saw it for her own eyes, that the pool's delamination was the cause of shoddy workmanship. And Donald Trump cutting corners and trying to force the contractor to finish the job for the July 4th celebration. Done. I could have told you that. I did tell you that. Even Atlantic Industrial Coating admitted as much on their own website when they said, we're going back to the site to do warranty work, right? They didn't say we're going back to the site because of criminal mischief or vandalism or knives or box cutters in the middle of the night, right? But this hasn't put a stop to it because Davey Hearn has some choices now to make. He's in the driver's seat because that motion to dismiss the indictment has to be granted by a judge, and she wants to hear from the defendant. And so the defendant, represented by Norm Eisen, friend of Midas and our podcasts, he's going to do the following, I'm sure. He's going to ask that the indictment be dismissed with prejudice, meaning never to be seen again, burned beyond recognition, not without prejudice, allowing the Department of Justice to try to re-indict Davey Hearn, which is what they're asking. So, and I think that gets granted. They're going to ask for sanctions. They're going to ask for a referral potentially to the bar or to the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. They're going to ask for the grand jury transcript because they want to see how the fabricated evidence was brought into the grand jury room so that the judge can do further fact-finding around that. I'm sure that's going to happen. And then Davey Hearn has his own case against Fox News. I'm surprised it hasn't been filed, because they let Jesse Waters and a couple of other people and Jeanine Pirro go on the show to bash mercilessly Davey Hearn. He became the Richard Jewell of 2020, of this century. Remember Richard Jewell, the poor guy who's a security guard? They blamed for like putting the backpack bomb in the Atlanta Olympic Park. Turned out he didn't. Ruined his life. I think he committed suicide at some point. Right. This is Richard Jewell all over again. And Richard Jewell won a defamation case against Papers and others, and Davy Hearn should against Fox as well. With Jesse Waters having Donald Trump phone in, oh yeah, there's video. This is a criminal negligence. This is criminal malicious destruction of federal property. It isn't. And you got the wrong guy. And that's not what happened. And you let Jeanine Pirro come on and bash the guy as well and defame him. And I don't think Davy Hearn, for the purposes of this case, is a public figure. I mean, sure, he's a former Olympic cyclist, but I don't think he's a public figure, as that term is used in defamation law under a case we called New York Times versus Sullivan. I don't think he's got to show actual malice. See, that's a concept in the law that's reserved for people of high profile. Because then you got to show that not only did you defame me and say something false about me, if I'm a public figure, I have to show that that thing you said that was false, you knew it was false, or you recklessly disregarded whether it was true or false. That's called actual malice. It's an additional element for people who are public figures. I don't think he's a public figure in that way. And you're not a public figure for all things. I mean, I don't mean to be rude to cyclists, but did you know who Davy Hearn was before the reflecting pool? Did you know who Davy Hearn was the summer that he was in the Olympics? You know, all kidding aside, I think his first argument his lawyer should make is that he's not required to make out actual malice. He could probably make it out anyway against Fox for a huge defamation amount. Huge. And with punitive damages. $100 million. $100 million case for Davy Hearn. That's what I project. And I think he'll get it. And Fox has done bad things before. They paid $770 million in a settlement against Dominion Voting Systems for having lied about them and almost destroyed their voting system, voting booth machine business by platforming people like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and others, saying that there was a Venezuelan plot to flip votes from Trump to Biden with software by Smartmatic and hardware by Dominion. All a lie. And internal emails basically established on-air people and producers that were like, these people are crazy. But the ratings are good. Yeah, same thing's going to happen here. Same thing's going to happen here. And all that money they made defaming Davy Hearn, all those ad dollars they earned during those couple of weeks with the reflecting pool and the Vandal story narrative are going to all come back to Davy Hearn. And then you've got the last cascading issue, which is the Cultural Landscape Foundation. There's a t-shirt I want to own. The Cultural Landscape Foundation. They exist. And God love them for existing. They brought the case against the Department of Interior to stop them from effing with the reflecting pool without a bid, without analysis, without approval. And they keep draining and refilling the pool. So the Cultural Foundation ran to Judge Carl Nichols, and said, enough is enough. They're destroying evidence. Now they've got the grounds for the destruction of the evidence, and it's in Jeanine Pirro's own motion to dismiss against Davy Hearn. So now you've got new filings there in that particular case. See, this case of the reflecting pool isn't just about Trump and Jeanine Pirro, whose boss right now is Todd Blanche, and the rest. It's not all that. It's about a disease. It's a symptom of a cancerous disease named Donald Trump and what he's done to hollow out the once proud Department of Justice. And so if Susan Collins has the intestinal fortitude and the brass ones to stand up to Donald Trump, I hope that leads others to follow on the Senate floor and to block Todd Blanche. And things like the reflecting pool and the Epstein document scandal and the Jan 6th fund scandal are not in Todd Blanche's rear view mirror. And we're not going to let them either here on the intersection on Legal AF or on the Midas Touch Network. And by the way, take a minute, hit that free subscribe button over on the Legal AF YouTube channel. And now let's turn to Capital One. No, it's not an ad, although it sounds like one. It's Capital One finally telling the world what they really think about Donald Trump, his 400 companies, his 300 bank accounts that used to be with Capital One and his family. Because they were forced into it by Donald Trump's own filing against Capital One because he was, quote unquote, debanked. Now, they took the argument as a cover. The narrative that Donald Trump wanted to push along with Don Jr. is that Capital One fired the Trump family and their 300 bank accounts because they were trying to curry favor with the radical left after Jan 6th. And it was a woke reaction, diversity, equity, inclusion, and such. The problem with that is it's not true. And Capital One, which had kept it a secret for the last 3 years, finally couldn't take it any longer. And in a motion to dismiss against the third attempt by Donald Trump to bring a claim against them for, quote unquote, debanking them, or as I like to call it, enforcing the bank's rights under their client agreement and account agreement, they finally had it. They didn't have to put this in the motion to dismiss. Let me explain something to people from having done this for a long, long time. There's certain things you can put in a motion to dismiss because you have to. There's certain things you put into a motion to dismiss because you want to. You don't need to do it. In fact, it may even go further than you are permitted to do, but you may want to push the envelope in a certain case. And in this one, you do. And Capital One told the world in their filing that the reason they fired those 300 bank accounts and got rid of the Trump family 3 years ago is because after an extensive months-long analysis of those bank accounts by anti-money laundering experts in the bank, in what we call the compliance department, many of them former law enforcement, after looking at transaction by transaction, they determined that it was likely that the money laundering was going on or terrorist financing. Did you hear what I just said? Now that you can pick yourself up off the floor. Capital One fired Donald Trump and his 300 bank accounts along with his family and his trust business because they suspected possible money laundering or terrorist financing. Now, they told that to the Trump organization apparently at the time they debanked them, and gave them additionally 3 months, extended to about 6 months, to go find other bank accounts and other banks, and didn't disclose that that was the reason to give the Trump family the opportunity, without having a black mark or a scarlet letter, to try to end up at another financial services location. But now that they've been pushed over and over again, and Donald Trump's on his third attempt to state a claim, they said enough is enough. Here's the reason, they said, that we fired Donald Trump. Had nothing to do with Jan 6th, although it could have. Had nothing to do with the wokeness or diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, or trying to curry favor with the radical left. It's because after detailed, exhaustive analysis by our compliance department, which is required by federal law to follow and abide by know your customer regulations, anti-money laundering regulations, Patriot Act regulations about terrorist financing, and to fill out suspicious activity reports. We call them SARS reports. After all of that was done, and they looked at tens of thousands of transactions across, think about how many transactions in a monthly statement for a long period of time for 300 bank accounts. And what they saw, they didn't like. Both human beings in the compliance department and the AML head, and I'm sure they use software. There's software out there to do this, and AI to do an audit. I've been involved with it myself. I was, as people know, I was the deputy general counsel of a financial services company. I worked shoulder to shoulder with the compliance department. I was often brought in on onboarding accounts or onboarding clients or offboarding them. in making that hard decision. So you always have the business people, what we call the front office of a financial services firm. They're always lobbying to bring the account in because they get paid. They're a broker. They get commission, or they get paid on the amount that they bring in. They want to bring it in, and they want to turn a blind eye to any red flag. That's where the compliance department comes in. And there's supposed to be a control wall so that the front office, the people making the money, making the sale, are not influencing the compliance department. So you're not supposed to be lobbying the compliance department. And so hopefully the AML, Anti-Money Laundering, Bank Secrecy Act, Know Your Customer world of Capital One is separate and apart from the executives who make money off the profitability of Capital One. I think that's what happened here. And you release the hounds and you drill down. Once there's a suspicious activity report filed, or hundreds of them, you then do your analysis. Now, you may go back to the client, like Donald Trump and his family, and say, can you explain these 500 transactions, money in, money out? We don't like who the deposit's coming in from on a wire. What's with the Russian bank or the Chinese bank or this bank or that bank? Or we don't understand your business. You told us your business was about X, but you're bringing in money here and there's cryptocurrency there. All sorts of questions. They can ask those questions. And if they don't get sufficient answers, of course, they can pull the plug on the accounts, or they don't have to ask those questions at all. See, under almost every account opening document I've ever been involved with, including some that I've revised and rewritten, it always reserves the right to the bank or financial institution, the brokerage account or whatever it's going to be, the right to fire you for no reason, good reason, bad reason, no reason at all. And you can't argue bad faith, or fraudulent concealment, or all the other BS that Donald Trump is arguing. And because they kept pushing and pushing and pushing Capital One, they finally revealed it. Here's the reason why. Because we couldn't clear you about whether you were committing money laundering or terrorist financing. There you have it. Donald Trump likes to have firsts, right? He likes to be the biggest, the best, the smartest, no one's ever seen in history. Okay, well, this is another one he can chalk up to that. He's the first president in history that ever had 300 bank accounts closed because the bank, after doing diligent investigation, believed that it was possible that he and his family were money laundering or financing terrorism. There you go. You can put that up in gold leaf or some sort of statue or monument, or engrave it on the side of something in Washington while you're still in office. How about that? Wow. Well, these are the kind of stories at the intersection of law and politics that we need to cover together. And we do it together. We have a fellowship here. We have a community, a bond of trust. I've been with Midas Touch since, well, not day one, but I don't know, week one? Because I like to joke with the brothers, if they were handing out employee badges after the three of them, I'm employee badge number 4. I founded Legal AF with Ben Mysalis within months of Midas Touch launching, and I've been here ever since. And they're my partners and collaborators on the Legal AF YouTube channel, but we can't do it. That's all sounds interesting, and that's marginally interesting cocktail discussion or around a kitchen table when I meet somebody in a hotel abroad like I am right now. But what really matters is you. Whether every elected official, leader, former U.S. attorney, former senior official in the Department of Justice, governor, and the rest, every one of them says the same thing, that without the power of the people banding together to bring accountability to government, none of this is going to work. Don't lose sight of how big and powerful, connected and united you are. Because, Donald Trump's, what he thinks is his greatest gift is to convince you that you're powerless, to divide America so that he doesn't get hit with the tidal wave of, 200 million people saying no at the same time. But we are bigger and more powerful than any person or party in Washington. And we can't forget that. I won't, and we won't together. While you're here, hit the Midas Touch subscribe button. It's free. You might think you're subscribed, but I don't think so. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel. I just checked the numbers just while we were on the air tonight. Another 1,000 people became subscribers of Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and you can too. You might think you're subscribed there. Popok, didn't I do that last year? I checked. I don't think so. So become a subscriber there. Come over to Legal AF Substack and become a Substack member. All this is for free. Download the audios for Legal AF, the podcast for sure, but for the Intersection podcast, this new podcast as well. Hundreds of thousands of people watch this, millions a month, but we need more audio downloads. That's what I've been told. My producers, if I had an earpiece, they'd be whispering in my ear, Popok, we need more downloads. That's what we need. And I'm so honored. I would not do what I'm doing now, which is it's now midnight my time somewhere. My family is fast asleep, but soon to be getting up for another fun-filled day tomorrow while daddy sits in a public space in a hotel. But I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for you. You're the reason we get up in the morning. And from the moment we get up off our pillow until our head hits the pillow at the end of the day, that's all we think about. The brothers, me, and others contributors on Midas Touch is you. And the defense of our democracy, and the defense of our rule of law, and our court system, and our federal judges, to make sure something is still standing at the end of Donald Trump's reign of terror. We will do it again. We will do it together. Tomorrow night, midweek edition of Legal AF podcast. I'll be there. Saturday edition of Legal AF podcast with my co-founder, Ben Meiselas. Tuesday nights, you know where to be. Intersection here on the Midas Touch Network, and come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Hit that free subscribe button where you'll see, even while I'm away, 4 of my videos every day in the morning, and then the rest of the contributors throughout the day. Until my next report, thanks for being here. Shout out to the Midas Mighty, the Legal AFers, and the Intersectionists. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.